Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Among phrases that cause anxiety, we need to talk ranks high, especially when it's followed by a formal address to a partner. When my wife's usual Seb turned into Sebastian, I sensed a foreboding shift. The end was near. I had already hired a private investigator, a man who looked like he stepped straight out of a classic film, to set up a recording device in a hotel room. This room was where my wife, Nora, shared her time with her boss, Daniel Taylor. Taylor, recently appointed as the executive vice president of sales at the company, appeared in every photo alongside my wife, each one attesting to an undeniable closeness between them. These images made my next steps clear. I resolved to get revenge. My plan required patience, and I maintained an outward calm, biding my time for the right moment. The next week dragged on endlessly. Nora, who once eagerly shared details of her workday with me, now spoke less and less, as if words slipped away from her with each passing evening. I asked her questions. How was your day? Who did you have lunch with? How's the new boss? Each time she hesitated, gave a vague answer, and then quickly changed the subject. Our evenings grew heavy with silent tension, while the detective continued his close watch. Every Friday, like clockwork, Taylor would step out to call clients mid-morning. 10 minutes later, Nora would leave the office, claiming she had an appointment with the chiropractor. Their destination was a cheap motel on the edge of town. With all the evidence gathered, I was ready to expose their affair when the time was right. My moment arrived. I stopped by the company shortly after Nora left, and asked Maria, the secretary, to pass her a message. Her husband had come by to surprise her with an invitation to lunch. Maria smiled politely and replied, "Oh, Mr. Brown, your wife just left for a doctor's appointment." Every time, it seemed, this doctor's appointment took precedence over lunch together. "Thank you," I said, trying not to show any reaction, though inside I was burning. I already had my phone ready, knowing Nora wouldn't dare ignore a call during a busy reporting period. The phone rang, and I heard her cheerful, practiced voice. "Good afternoon. This is Nora Brown." I steadied myself. "Is everything all right?" I asked. She paused, surprised. "What's going on?" I told her that I had come by to surprise her with lunch, only to find out she had gone to her usual Friday appointment. I tried to sound as calm as possible, asking, "Are you all right?" Her answer was cold. Just a routine chiropractor visit. But there was an edge of irritation in her tone, as if, according to plan, her tension was bound to spill over later when she met with her partner. "Funny," I replied. "I recently saw Dr. Vilchak, and he mentioned he hadn't seen you for over a year. Asked if you'd found another doctor." Silence fell on the line. "So, what's the name of your new chiropractor?" She snapped back. "I don't have time to discuss this now. We'll talk in the evening," and hung up. Fridays were usually our pizza night, and this evening was no exception. I was just tipping the delivery guy when Nora's car pulled into the garage. "Finally," I muttered as she walked through the door. "I feel unwell," she mumbled, passing me and heading straight upstairs. Shortly after, the bathroom door closed behind her. Hours later, when I joined her in bed, she lay there, still awake. I leaned in and quietly asked one last question. Why all the secrecy around the doctor visits? Is there something I should know? I was resolute. "Nora, I can't go on like this anymore. You need to let me in. Tell me what's happening." She waved me off, barely meeting my eyes. "Please don't push me," she muttered. "Honestly, everything's fine." The day had drained me, and my patience was running thin. "We'll talk tomorrow," I said, clinging to the hope she'd open up. But that night, as I lay in bed, I heard her muffled, barely audible sobs. She buried her face in the pillow, trying to stifle the sounds, though I doubted she found any real rest. Her anguish reminded me of Oedipus, haunted, tormented by the secrets within. Saturday arrived, and Nora was on edge, snapping at minor things. If we had a pet, it would wisely stay out of her way. Despite her promise, the conversation about the doctor never happened, and every time I brought it up, she deflected. She avoided me most of the day. Finally, after lunch, I managed to catch her alone. Trying to lighten the mood, I said, "I booked us a table at the Crab for 7. You love that place. Maybe it'll help?" She just shrugged, her face expressionless. I left her alone, but an hour later, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. I entered with a box from her favorite boutique. "I have a little surprise for you," I said, handing her the box. She didn't open it or react, and the silence grew heavy. "I thought you might want to wear it tonight," I added, hoping to ease the tension. When she finally came downstairs, dressed in the new outfit, I told her how beautiful she looked. "I had one more gift, saving it for a special occasion," I said, offering her another box. "But now seems like the right time." She tore off the wrapping, peeked inside, and suddenly began to cry. "They'll go perfectly with your dress," I said quietly, hoping the pearls might bring her a small measure of happiness. But dinner passed in awkward silence. She spoke so softly that the waitress had to lean in to hear her order. Even after 3 glasses of wine, her lips remained tightly sealed. Most of her meal went untouched and was eventually packed to go. When we returned, she exited the car before I had even unbuckled. She paused, glanced back for a moment. "Thank you," she mumbled. Those were the first words she'd spoken in hours. I watched her go upstairs and shut herself in the bathroom. I approached quietly and listened. My suspicions were confirmed. She was talking to Taylor, likely calming him, perhaps assuring him they'd be together soon. Back in my study, a heavy sense of despair washed over me. I took a small bottle from my pocket and swallowed a few pills, a habit I'd developed since discovering her infidelity. It was the only thing that kept my mind from crumbling. Later, I saw her downstairs again, holding a glass, still in the black dress I had gifted her. Despite everything, I couldn't deny how captivating she looked. She noticed my gaze but quickly turned away. Even though I had prepared myself for this, the realization still hit hard. Trying to stay composed, I pretended to read as she finally entered the room. She lingered in silence, which felt like an eternity, then broke it with small talk. "Sebastian," she said softly, "is that book interesting?" Her detached tone and downcast eyes spoke volumes. Our marriage was over. I had been preparing for this conversation for weeks, rehearsing my response, convincing myself to stay calm. Carefully marking my page, I closed the book and replied, "Not as interesting as our marriage once was." Meeting her gaze, I asked, "What's on your mind, Nora? Can you finally tell me what's bothering you?" Her eyes filled with tears, and I softened my voice. "What happened, my love?" Gently taking her hands, I waited in silence, hoping she would finally give me an answer. She was already crying. "Did the doctor give you bad news?" I asked, feeling the tension in the room as thick as fog. "No," she replied, her voice cutting through the silence. "Is it about your mother? Did something happen to her?" I asked gently, trying not to rush, but she shook her head. "Then, could it be something with your father?" I managed to ask before she firmly shook her head again. "I'm fine, really, it's something else," she mumbled. Trying to comfort her, I stood up and slowly pulled a chair away from the octagonal table, gesturing for her to sit. Once she sat down, I whispered, "I'll be right back." She looked up at me, her red, swollen eyes filled with confusion and pain. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Just for a minute," I replied, trying to reassure her. "I need to grab something upstairs." I headed to my study, opened the safe, and took out my briefcase and laptop. When I returned, she was sitting there, hands resting at her sides, her gaze distant and tired. I placed the bag next to me and began clearing the chess pieces from the board. Each piece fell to the floor with a dull thud, echoing in the stillness of the room. She watched me, her gaze a mix of sadness and bewilderment. I opened my laptop and started typing. "What are you doing?" she asked, tension thick in her voice. I simply held a finger to my lips. "Almost done," I whispered. The room filled with the sounds of typing and her uneven breathing. After a few minutes, I gently closed the laptop. "There. Now please tell me what's on your mind," I softly urged. Her face twisted with emotion, and she began to cry again. I handed her a tissue, quietly waiting for her to gather herself. With difficulty, she finally whispered, I don't want to hurt you. You're everything a husband should be. I remained silent, sensing she needed time to find the right words. Sebastian, she continued, her voice trembling, I really love you, but I'm no longer in love with you. At last, she said it. Nora buried her face in her hands. I can't even explain how it happened, her voice heavy with shame and sorrow. Pain tore through me, but I stayed quiet, giving her space to understand her own feelings. We've been together since high school, from our freshman year, she went on, breaking the silence. We were always Sebastian and Nora, but now, I feel like I need time to figure out who I am outside of that. So you're saying you don't love me anymore because we seem like the perfect couple? I asked, confused. No, she replied with a hint of frustration. That's not what I mean. Then say it again, I insisted. You said you don't love me anymore, but I don't understand. Please, explain. You just won't get it, she sighed. You're a successful businessman. You have everything you worked for. And me? I feel like I'm disappearing, fading into your shadow. So this is my fault? I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. It's not about your career, Sebastian, she replied, almost with a sense of desperation. I waited, giving her the space to express something that was clearly hard to put into words. Have you thought about seeing a family therapist? I asked finally. That's not exactly what I meant, she admitted, her voice faltering. Then the next step is divorce, I said bluntly. No, not that, Sebastian, you don't understand. I want to find a way to strengthen us, to rebuild what we have, she pleaded. Then what do you suggest? I asked, feeling my patience start to wane. Her voice softened, and she finally said, I was thinking, maybe we should try living apart for a while. I took a deep breath, clenching my fists. All right, I said slowly. Explain it to me. She looked surprised, but I wasn't about to give up. Didn't Amy from your office go through something similar with her husband? I interrupted her. What issue? She asked warily. The one I just mentioned. She felt like she'd lost herself in her marriage. Isn't that the whole point of marriage? Two people becoming one? I continued. So, how long do you think this finding yourself should take? I pressed. I reminded her that Amy and her husband, after some time apart, decided to start dating each other again, even considering reconciliation. Dating? I asked. Is that your plan? While you're away, are you planning to see other people? Or is there already someone specific waiting for you? No, she replied firmly. I told you, I love you. I'm not looking for anyone else. I just need a little space to find myself again. That doesn't answer my question, I replied, keeping my tone steady. And after you leave, where exactly do you plan to go? A long silence hung between us before she finally answered. I thought I'd stay nearby, she admitted quietly. It's different for a man, I said, struggling to contain my irritation. A woman alone, it's riskier. She gave a short, bitter laugh. That's not going to happen. Don't treat me like I'm helpless. Please, Sebastian, stop being so unreasonable. Unreasonable? I retorted sharply, barely holding my voice in check. I'm the one fighting for our marriage, trying to keep us together. How is leaving supposed to make us stronger? You're breaking the promises we made to each other. To be there, for better or worse. Remember those? Sebastian, you're not seeing this the way I am, she pleaded. I shook my head. Right. You keep repeating that we'll stay together. But your promises? They don't mean anything to me anymore. Please don't say that, she whispered, her voice trembling. I'll say it as many times as I need to. What changed? What exactly made you so unhappy with us? It wasn't one thing, she finally replied after a pause. It's more like 100 small things piling up. Like when we were at the country club and the doorman called me Mrs. Brown. I frowned. You were upset because he showed you respect? Is that the problem? No, Sebastian, she said irritably. It's just hundreds of little things that I can't even explain. She fell silent, as if expecting me to say something, but I remained quiet. After a long silence, I pulled 2 folders with legal documents from my briefcase and placed them on the table. Then I opened my laptop, selected a file, and turned the screen toward her. "This," I said, and images appeared on the screen showing her holding hands with another man as they entered a hotel. The photos changed every few seconds, each one capturing her breaking her vows. Her face turned pale, and she slumped in her chair, unconscious. I waited, then brought her a glass of water, helping her take a sip as she came to, her expression one of growing panic. "How long have you known?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "How long have I known that the woman who swore fidelity betrayed me?" "Long enough." I slid the signed divorce papers across the table. She stared at the papers, speechless. "You broke our vows. This is the end. Sign, and I can finally let go." She clutched the papers tightly, as if afraid they'd disappear, her eyes scanning the lines that clearly stated that the reason for our separation was infidelity. Attached to the document, Evidence B, were about 24 photos with annotations. When Nora saw them, she screamed, "Oh God, no!" Her fists pounded the table, and she sobbed something incoherent. Watching the woman I once loved finally grasp the irreversible consequences of her actions was not a moment that brought me any satisfaction. As the reality of our marriage's collapse hit her, she seemed to shrink, like a shadow of herself. I wondered if she truly believed I would somehow come to terms with her betrayal. With each new photo, her cries grew louder, and my disgust only deepened. Thankfully, I had taken nearly an overwhelming dose of sedative to withstand this moment. Otherwise, I might have faltered. I would have chosen death over this, but the pill bottle was empty. Nora collapsed to the floor, clutching at my leg, whispering one word, "Please." I resisted the urge to crush her fingers under my heel. Instead, I moved my chair back, staying out of her reach. Even though I knew how it would end, there was still a surreal feeling about it all. Closing my eyes, I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare I could wake up from. But when I opened them again, I remained in this dark reality, where the ghost of my past life mocked me with every breath. The doorbell snapped me back to the present. "I'll be right back," I muttered. 2 men entered, carrying boxes. We exchanged a few words and they headed toward the wardrobe in the master bedroom. Hiring movers to pack up my wife's belongings hadn't been cheap, but it was worth every penny. Nora lifted her head, her voice barely audible as she asked, "Who are they?" "Refer to document A. Our prenuptial agreement states that infidelity strips you of everything, including this house," I replied. "They're here to pack your things. I've rented a storage unit near your office and paid for the first and last months. Today, you're moving out." Nora's screams filled the room. "I can't believe this is happening." She curled up, crying. "What did you expect when you decided to sleep with your boss?" I retorted. "Oh, Sebastian, I didn't," she stammered. "Can I explain?" "It's too late. You lied and cheated. There are a few things you should know," I continued. "The lease on your car is under the company's name. I've taken your keys. It will be repossessed tomorrow morning. Your credit cards have been canceled. Your phone will be disconnected tomorrow, and your name is removed from our accounts. No one at the country club will respect you anymore." My phone rang. Looking at the screen, I answered, "It's all set. Thank you." I paused. "Oh, you might be interested to know. Your lover's wife, who is pregnant, threw him out of their house when my investigator handed her these photos." I turned the screen toward Nora, showing her yet another compromising shot. "I warned you he was a womanizer," I reminded her. "But you called me foolish. 2 weeks later, he was in bed with you. His wife threatened to divorce him if he cheated again. And for your information, you're the third woman he's cheated with. You won't need to worry about a life alone anymore." Nora's phone rang. "Let me guess. Your lover with good news?" I snatched the phone and shattered it on the floor, ending the call. Her face twisted in horror, her eyes filled with fear. "You planned every step, didn't you?" she whispered. "Yes. My lawyer will meet with your employer tomorrow. Given company policy, I expect you'll be fired for immoral behavior along with your lover. Do they pay unemployment benefits to idiots?" The doorbell rang a second time. "I'll be right back," I said. Nora sat frozen, her mouth slightly open, making strange sounds. A gray-suited elderly man entered the room behind me. "This is Mr. Jackson, the notary. He'll witness your signature on the divorce papers along with the movers." She asked a faint question. "And if I refuse to sign?" "Then I'll press send, and everyone you know, family, friends, colleagues, people from church, women at the club, will receive an email with evidence of your affair. There's even a video. Do you have anything to say that might change my mind?" Her face went blank. "If you had been honest with me today, I would have done everything to save our marriage. But all you did was lie," I said, my voice trembling with anger I'd held back for so long. "You betrayed me, betrayed us. I hate you like I've never hated anyone, and that frightens me. 3 months ago, you were my everything. Now it's all dead. This is a no-fault divorce. I have a second set of documents stating irreconcilable differences. Sign them, leave my house, and I won't tell anyone the truth." 10 minutes later, her signature was witnessed and notarized. As she waited for the taxi on the driveway to the cheap motel I'd booked for her, she looked dazed, empty. 3 years have passed, and I've kept my promise not to tell anyone, until now. I punished her, left her impoverished and jobless. As far as I know, she never found another relationship and works at a fast food restaurant. And me? I'm a successful man with a wonderful, faithful wife and a little daughter. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I stood quietly before Penelope's grave, looking down at the modest stone that bore only her name, a start and end date, the brief outline of her time here. Though the years had gone by since she passed, the weight of loss clung to me as sharply as if she'd left yesterday. My name's Luke Moore, a former officer in the Marine Corps Reserve. No lengthy introduction here, just the essentials. I joined the Marine Corps in 1975, just as the Vietnam era was coming to a close. Starting as a private, I served actively until 1987, then transitioned into the reserves. My first marriage didn't end well. Coming home from a 7-month deployment, I discovered my then-wife with another man, right in our home on base. If anything good came from that marriage, it was our 2 kids, Mike and Melissa. After moving into the reserves, I applied to officer candidate school and was fortunate enough to be accepted. With an electrical engineering degree in hand, I landed a solid job at an aerospace company that worked with the Department of Defense. It was there, at a corporate event, that I met Penelope, nearly a decade younger than me. From the first conversation, we just clicked. She became close to my kids, and my reserve status fit well with her lifestyle. As a reservist, I served 2 weekends each month, plus 2 weeks of training each year. After several months together, I proposed, and she happily accepted. Our wedding was everything I'd hoped for, with a full Marine Honor Guard in attendance. We set out to make a life together, and the first years were full of happiness. We tried to start a family, but our hopes were dashed. 2 miscarriages, and then an ectopic pregnancy. After that, the doctors recommended we consider permanent birth control. Although it was painful, we agreed and moved on. Sometimes we'd discuss adoption. When Desert Storm came around, I was newly promoted to captain and assigned to battalion staff. By 2008, after 2 deployments to Iraq, I returned to find our marriage struggling. By that time, I was a major, serving as the battalion's executive officer. Through all the years, Penelope had given me no reason to doubt her. She seemed as faithful as anyone could wish. We stayed connected at least twice a week by letter or email, even while I was overseas. Monthly phone calls were rare but treasured, and we made them happen whenever we could. Communication was tough during combat, but we did our best. I had faith that our love was solid and constant. Yet near the end of my final deployment, her letters came less frequently, and she was hard to reach when I tried calling. I dismissed it as a side effect of the war's pressures. I emailed her ahead of my return, giving her my travel details, and left voicemails but heard nothing back. I chalked it up to time zones, until I arrived home and saw no one waiting at the airport. I caught a cab, thinking I'd find her at home, maybe asleep. Instead, the house was silent. Too silent. No sign of Penelope, no strange car in the driveway, and nothing visibly out of place, but something felt wrong. On the kitchen table, right next to the coffee maker, was a note. Just a scrap of paper with a few hastily written lines. "Sorry I missed you. Be at Riverside Drive at 11 p.m. tonight. Everything will be explained. Bring the chip." It was simply signed with a lowercase d. No warm greeting, no reunion, just this cryptic message, alongside what looked like a poker chip with the number 50 on it. Trying to stay optimistic, I thought, at least there's a note. Maybe Penelope had found work, something we'd occasionally discussed when I was away. It was only 9 in the morning, so I had time. Curious, I plugged the address into Google and opened the link tied to the location. As I read the screen, a chill crept through me. The address led to a rundown club by the docks called the Shadow Lady. It catered to an exclusive clientele, offering a members-only VIP lounge where explicit live performances were the draw. The website highlighted 4-star performers, one of whom went by Darla and bore the unsettling title Queen of the Gang Bang. A terrible suspicion crept over me. Could Darla actually be Penelope, my own wife? I scrolled back to Darla's profile on the Shadow Lady's website, noticing a clickable link on her photo. Against my better instincts, I clicked, landing on a page with preview images and video clips. I made the choice to watch, and what I saw left me sick with regret. It was her, Penelope, my wife of 47 years, engaged in acts beyond description, everything on display in the videos. Her sounds in the footage made it clear she wasn't just present, but fully invested in each scene. Beneath the videos was a grid of blue poker chips like ones I had at home, each numbered from 1 to 50, apparently for booking purposes. A note explained that anyone could reserve a spot for Darla's 4 weekly shows, meaning up to 50 men per night. I had no idea how long she'd been doing this. In disbelief, I shut down the computer, my mind spinning. How had Penelope changed so completely from the reserved woman I'd married? I knew our marriage was finished, but I needed explanations. I went to check the mail, hoping for something that might give me a clue. Only routine envelopes filled the box. Bills, insurance updates, nothing out of the ordinary. Then I checked my phone. One message caught my attention. A note from Dr. Marks at the base hospital, urgently requesting that either Penelope or I get in touch. I dialed right away, reaching him on the second ring. "Good morning, Major," he said. "Glad I could finally reach you." "I just got back from Iraq," I told him, "and haven't seen my wife yet. What's going on?" "Major, this isn't something to discuss over the phone. When can you come to my office?" he asked. I looked at my watch. I'd need a few minutes to get ready. "Give me a bit to freshen up and I'll be on my way," I replied. He thanked me, and I hung up, wondering what could be so urgent. I quickly dressed in my Class C uniform, adjusted my insignia and ribbons, put on my dress shoes, and grabbed my garrison cap. An hour later, I was seated in Dr. Marks's office. The elderly Navy captain, who outranked me, greeted me with a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming, Major," he said. He paused, then asked, "Forgive the personal question, but when was the last time you were intimate with your wife?" "About a year ago, just before I deployed to Iraq," I answered, thrown by the question. He opened a folder and pulled out a document. "3 months ago, your wife came in for blood tests. She tested positive for several STDs and we began treatment. But a later test result showed something more severe. She's positive for HIV. He passed me the paperwork. "We'll need a list of her partners from the past 4 to 6 months." I shook my head. That could be a difficult task. "Why do you say that?" he asked, concerned. "Because while I was away, Penelope seems to have started working as a performer," I explained. "I just discovered this today. Based on what I saw, she's likely been with more than 2,000 men in the last few months, and possibly without any protection." Dr. Marks's face went pale. "This could be a public health crisis. I'll need to inform the CDC immediately. Where has she been working?" "A club by the docks called the Shadow Lady," I replied. "She's scheduled for 4 shows a week, and she's expecting me to be there tonight at 11. Major, for your safety, keep your distance. I expect authorities will step in soon, and she may be hospitalized." Prepare yourself for what's ahead. With all the details compiled, he indicated that a thorough assessment would take a couple of days, 3 at the most. I regret that you had to find out this way, Major, he said, his voice steady yet empathetic. I know this wasn't the welcome home you anticipated. I pressed, Is there any realistic chance for her recovery? Well, technically, yes, he responded, though the look in his eyes hinted otherwise. But let's be honest, it's almost like a death sentence. Sure, we can try medication, but looking at her condition overall, it doesn't look hopeful. Our primary focus now has to be containing the infection. He paused briefly before adding, One more thing, Major. I'm not trying to overstep here, but you know this is something the Corps doesn't take lightly. They have expectations for an officer's spouse, and right now she's not meeting them. It's challenging to lead in the field if there's disorder at home. I gave a nod as he went on. The Corps will be observing how you handle this. I imagine your first thought is to cut her loose and proceed with a divorce. Not an unreasonable guess, I replied. Understandable, he acknowledged. But given her diagnosis, that might push her to a breaking point. I know you wouldn't want that. It's a tempting option, I admitted, my voice barely audible. Major, this situation isn't easy, but there may be aspects you don't fully grasp. She might be under some kind of coercion, possibly drugs, maybe even blackmail. It could be worth considering a long-term care facility for her. Your insurance should cover it. He offered a moment's reflection. Give her a chance to receive the help she needs, and think about what you want out of this situation. There's wisdom in tempering justice with mercy. That's from General John A. Lejeune, I said, recognizing the quote. It's about showing mercy without compromising discipline. I understand, sir. Honor, courage, loyalty. It's clear. Good, he replied with a nod. Resolve this, but don't let bitterness guide you. We shook hands. Thank you. Semper Fi, he said with a firm smile. Uhura, I replied. Dr. Mark then advised, more like ordered, that I get tested for STDs. Despite not having been intimate in over a year, he wanted me to do it for peace of mind. Following his advice, I provided the samples, then headed home, feeling queasy. With a few hours to spare before I had to be at the Shady Lady, I changed into comfortable clothes, grabbed a beer, and settled into my den to process everything. The weight of it all hit me, and unexpectedly, I broke down, releasing emotions I had been holding back for far too long. Marines have emotions too, after all. Eventually, I drifted into sleep, memories of the early, blissful years with Penelope filling my dreams. I woke up around 9:30, took a shower, dressed in jeans and a Marine Corps t-shirt, and headed out. By 10:45, I had arrived at the club, where a large bouncer blocked my entrance. I showed him a blue poker chip and mentioned that Darla had invited me. He gave a smirk of recognition and allowed me in. Navigating the bar's unfamiliar layout took a moment, but I found my way to the VIP section upstairs. The tables were arranged in a half circle around a big stage, with oversized screens overhead to ensure a full view from every seat. There weren't many people around, and I scanned the room for my wife. Instead, a heavy-set man with a receding hairline and a flashy pinstripe suit approached me, extending his hand in greeting and guiding me to a table. So, you're Darla's husband, he said, sounding genuinely pleased. I've wanted to meet you for some time. Yes, I am, and you would be. Oh, where are my manners? He said with a smile. I'm Salvatore Giuseppe, the owner here, he introduced himself, gesturing for me to take a seat. Why don't you join me for a drink? A waitress, clad in little more than a skimpy thong, appeared at his wave, adding to the surreal nature of the evening. What can I get you? He asked, sizing me up with a keen, measured look. A Bud Light, I answered evenly, and Salvatore nodded, pleased, before ordering himself a gin and tonic. His expression shifted as he leaned closer, setting the tone for a serious discussion. All right, listen, he started. I know who you are. A Marine with a reputation. I looked into you. 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, a Silver Star, Navy and Marine Corps medals. You've been through it all, from Vietnam to Iraq. People talk. He paused, gauging my reaction. But let's keep this simple for both of us. No heroics. Agreed? In a low, controlled tone, I replied, Salvatore, I didn't survive 2 Iraq tours by being careless. I know I'm on your turf and you've got the numbers. I'm aware of the odds. He nodded, acknowledging my words, and I decided to get straight to the point. What I don't understand, I said bluntly, is how my wife became the main attraction at your club. Salvatore leaned back, a faint smirk crossing his face as if he appreciated my directness. He explained how Penelope started out as a waitress at his club. He didn't hide his interest in her, mentioning how seeing her in her skimpy work outfit stirred something in him. Major, he said, his voice steady. No offense, but your wife is an attractive woman. She's tempting, yes. But no, I haven't taken it further with her. I don't mix business with pleasure, he added with a shrug. Still, she's good for business. Holding my anger in check, I struggled to keep my voice even. How did she get involved with all of this? Was she forced, maybe drugged or blackmailed? I demanded. Unfazed, Salvatore leaned in, unbothered by my intensity. To be straight with you, yes, she was drugged once, but not by me, he clarified. We record everything here, and yeah, it rattled her at first. But over time, she embraced it. For her, it became an escape. Now, she's all in. She makes good money from tips and even gets a share of the video sales. He casually placed a stack of DVDs on the table. Consider these on the house. Normally, they go for around $300 each. Horrified yet drawn in, I took the stack and leafed through it, each one displaying Penelope in scenes I could hardly process. I knew these could be useful if things moved toward a divorce. How long has she been doing this? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Unfazed, Salvatore replied. About 8 months since she first started filming, 6 months since the group scenes began. She even does private shows now for VIP clients, government officials, CEOs, all types, he said matter-of-factly. A cold realization hit me, wondering about the risks tied to those high-profile clients. Noticing the blue chip I held, Salvatore pointed to it. Penelope reserved a front-row spot for you tonight. Those seats aren't cheap. Consider it a VIP pass. I met his gaze. Thanks for the honesty, Salvatore. But give Penelope a message for me. I'm not interested in being anyone's leftovers. Give this to someone else or keep it for yourself. I don't want it. I tossed the chip back on the table. He raised his hands, showing he'd said all he needed. Anything else you need? Sliding my wedding ring off, I placed it in his hand. Give this to her. Tell her to think hard about what it stands for and meet me tomorrow. We need to talk. Salvatore's expression softened as he nodded in understanding. With the DVDs in hand, I shook his hand and left without another glance. I had no desire to see her on that stage, not like this. At home, I climbed into bed, but sleep was out of reach. The following morning, I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, waiting. She owed me answers, and this time, I would get them. The revolver sat silently on the table, next to a stack of DVDs from Salvatore and the recent results from Penelope's medical tests. I heard the familiar turn of her key in the lock, just as Penelope stepped into the room. She was barely a trace of her former self. Her body, once athletic and strong, now appeared hollow and frail. The strain of regret weighed heavily on her, almost as though she might break beneath its force. Her face bore the trails of recent tears. Penelope, I said, the shock plain in my voice. You look terrible. What's going on? She moved toward me with a slow, weary gait, drained from her nights out. I'm so sorry, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't bother explaining it away as just sex, I responded, my voice edged with anger. It's more than that, and we both know it. Her eyes flicked to the revolver on the table, almost as if entranced. What kind of gun is that? She asked softly. Are you going to kill me? Maybe I deserve it. I shook my head. Don't be absurd, I replied. It's illegal, not to mention unnecessary. You've already done enough damage, not just to yourself, but likely to countless others, right here within our marriage. I handed her Dr. Marks's report, which had arrived just the day before. You have HIV, I said plainly. The weight of those words hit her like a hammer, and she collapsed into the nearest chair. Oh, God, she whispered, her face paling. I'm going to die, aren't I? And you're going to leave me. Her gaze returned to the revolver. I could end this now, she said, her voice trembling. Listen to me, Penelope, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. I won't go through with the divorce if you agree to start treatment today. She looked up, stunned. You mean it? She stammered, her eyes searching mine. Yes, I confirmed. I'll get you checked into a facility today. There's a lot more they can do for HIV now, and who knows? Maybe even a cure is on the horizon. But it's not just about the medical side. You need counseling, too. If you stay under my insurance, they'll cover what you need. So, I'll wait on the divorce. With fresh tears in her eyes, she whispered, Thank you. I'm so sorry for everything. I promise I'll make it up to you. She moved toward me, reaching out, but I instinctively stepped back. The image of her with others froze me in place. Seeing my reaction, she looked down and nodded. I understand. After a pause, she spoke again, her voice low. Let me go back, get my things, and I'll be ready to go wherever you need. Maybe that's not the best idea, I cautioned. But she was already reaching for the door, her resolve pushing aside any hesitation. My gaze dropped to the table where my wedding ring lay, left there by her, maybe deliberately. It was the last time I would see her. Later that morning, the news came. A police officer showed up at my door to deliver the details. Penelope had returned to the club, hoping to pack her belongings, and ended up facing Salvatore. She told him about her diagnosis and her plans to seek treatment. In a rage, Salvatore pulled his gun and shot her twice in the chest, once in the head. Afterward, the authorities, police, health officials, and even the CDC raided the club and shut it down. A shootout ensued, leaving Salvatore critically injured. That was 10 years ago. I've since left the force and spend most days out fishing. Yes, Penelope made terrible decisions, and I never had the chance to understand what led her down that path. I hold on to the good memories, though, and maybe one day I'll watch one of those DVDs. She was an unforgettable woman, no doubt. Maybe another woman will cross my path, someone who brings back a spark of joy. But marriage? That chapter is forever closed. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. By the time Wednesday evening rolled around, life felt as usual, predictably mundane. I came home worn out from a long day, ready to relax. My plan was straightforward. Warm up the leftovers Victoria had stored in the fridge, crack open a beer. But the moment I stepped inside, an odd feeling crept over me. I'm in the living room, sweetheart, Victoria's voice called, carrying an edge I couldn't quite place. Come sit down. We need to talk. A knot of tension coiled in my chest. Taking a steadying breath, I replied, Be right there, honey, keeping my voice even. In the living room, I found Victoria perched stiffly on the edge of the couch, her gaze fixed on a half-empty bottle of Californian red wine resting on the table. Her hand shook slightly as she poured herself another glass. I sank into my usual chair, the day's weariness settling even deeper. What's going on, Victoria? I asked, masking my apprehension with a steady tone. She drew a deep breath, meeting my eyes with an intensity that set my nerves on edge. I'll be up front. I've always been a loyal wife and a dedicated mother. Now that the kids are grown and living their own lives, my role here feels different. I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of worry and confusion brewing inside me. You've given everything to this family, I agreed, uncertain of where she was headed. She took a long sip of wine, then continued. You know, I had no experiences with anyone before we married. Trying to lighten the atmosphere, I chuckled softly. Neither did I. She didn't smile back. Anyway, she said, her voice calm yet unyielding. I'm leaving this weekend. With a friend. My pulse quickened. Who's the friend? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. If you must know, it's Oliver. Oliver Smith. Your boss. Her words landed like a punch to the gut. Isn't he younger than our own son? I managed, disbelief and anger blending together. She rolled her eyes dismissively. You're exaggerating. He's only 30. I want to know what it feels like to be with someone different. You care about me, she went on as though explaining a simple truth. I know you'll let me do this. Afterward, I'll set things right between us and we can move on. I clenched my jaw, my voice shaking as I replied, Victoria, if you go through with this, our marriage is done. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You wouldn't actually divorce me over something so trivial. Divorce is too expensive anyway, she said, waving off my words. That may be true, but I can't stay married to someone who cheats, I answered, feeling a simmering anger rise. Oliver will be here to pick me up Friday evening. I expect you to be cordial. He's nervous, and seeing you're okay with it might ease things, she stated plainly. I gaped at her, dumbfounded. You're asking me to welcome your boyfriend? Yes, that's exactly what I expect, she replied, finishing her glass and setting it aside. Silence enveloped the room, and a storm of emotions churned within me. I looked at Victoria, the woman I'd built a life with, yet now she felt like a stranger. Her revelation shattered something fundamental, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The days leading up to Friday were a careful, strained routine, each moment feeling like treading on thin ice. Every step felt risky, every word carefully chosen, as if any misstep could shatter everything. The air in the house grew thick with unspoken tension, as though the walls themselves braced for an impending storm. Victoria and I went through our routines, exchanging barely a handful of words, each one as delicate as glass. By Thursday night, as I absent-mindedly washed the dishes, Victoria wandered into the kitchen, jotting down a grocery list as if nothing had changed at all. Are we low on milk? Her voice, flat and emotionless, pierced the quiet. Almost out, I answered, attempting to mirror her detachment. Might as well pick up some bread, too. We went down the grocery list mechanically, treating each item as if it were just another box to check off. Our words stayed shallow, devoid of any personal weight. Each mundane remark was carefully measured to keep the fragile silence from shattering, like a delicate balance of indifference that neither of us dared to break. But that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Victoria finally punctured the quiet. Why do you have to make this so much harder? Her voice was calm, yet I could feel the frustration brimming beneath. I looked at her, anger and sorrow twisting inside me. How can you be so unaffected? Do you even realize what this is doing to us? She exhaled, her patience thinning. I've explained it all before. Why can't you just accept it? And us? What about our marriage? I shot back, my voice trembling under the weight of everything unsaid. Can we not have this conversation right now? I'm exhausted, she muttered, turning away. I watched her slip under the covers, the ache of isolation tightening around me. Unable to endure lying next to someone who felt so distant, I retreated to the office. The old fold-out bed was a mess of lumps and discomfort, but it was better than lying beside a stranger. When Friday arrived, it carried a fog of dread that clung to me all day. I drifted through work, unable to shake the heaviness, and my coworkers' concerned glances only deepened my exhaustion. By the time I got home, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Victoria, engrossed in her preparations, had already packed her suitcase and set it by the door. I kept my distance, retreating to the office, desperate to avoid her. Just after 7 p.m., the new doorbell chimed, a strange, unsettling tune that reverberated through the house. Gathering my composure, I called out, Victoria, what's that sound? It's the doorbell. I changed the tune, she replied nonchalantly from the bedroom. I mumbled to myself, the melody faintly familiar but unsettling. L, isn't it? Yes, that's it, she said. Change it back later, I replied quietly. Let Oliver in. I'll be out in a few minutes. I took a steadying breath, forcing calm as I opened the door. Oliver stood there, a smirk playing on his face. Resisting the urge to lash out, I managed a smile and stepped aside. Come in, Oliver. Thanks, he replied, looking around like he was appraising the place. Bourbon's on the shelf, I offered, trying to keep my voice steady. Perfect, he said, sinking onto the couch with casual ease. I poured him a glass, watching with growing resentment as he made himself comfortable. Each tick of the clock felt like an unbearable stretch of time, like the calm before a storm. Finally, Victoria appeared, looking flawless and composed. "Oliver, you're here," she greeted, brushing a soft kiss on his cheek. "Thank you for waiting," she said with warmth, her eyes only for him. "Not at all," Oliver replied smoothly, raising his glass in my direction as if to thank me. I returned the gesture with a tense smile, though inside anger and pain roiled beneath the surface. The thin thread holding us together was about to snap, unraveling what little piece remained. As the night pressed on, I sat in the living room, watching the clock tick away. Each sound felt like a warning, counting down to an inevitable end. Victoria was still in the bedroom, meticulously finishing her preparations. When the haunting doorbell tune echoed again, I took one last deep breath, steadying myself for the moment that I knew would change everything. As I cracked the door open, Oliver's smirk was waiting, igniting a surge of anger that nearly broke through my attempt to remain composed. I forced a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Oliver, come in," I managed, though the words left a bitter taste. "Thanks. Really appreciate it," he replied, striding confidently into my home. Guiding him to the living room, I gestured to the couch. "Want a drink? I've got some bourbon," I offered. His face lit up. "Bourbon sounds perfect, thanks," he said, settling in like he owned the place. I poured the drink, feeling the tension grow thicker in the air, nearly suffocating. "Here you go," I muttered, handing him the glass. With a casual "cheers," he raised his glass and I echoed his gesture, though barely. Silence filled the room, each second dragging out unbearably as the clock ticked in mockery. Finally, Victoria emerged, polished and elegant, ready for her trip. She greeted him with a soft kiss on the cheek. "Oliver, you're here," she said. "Sorry to keep you waiting." "No worries, Victoria," he replied smoothly, his smirk aimed at me as he raised his glass again. I mirrored the gesture, but inside, I was boiling. Watching them together, so at ease, was almost unbearable. "Well," I said, rising to my feet, "I'll leave you two to it." I made my way to the door, but something in me snapped. Whirling back, I faced Oliver, my anger spilling over. "You've got some nerve, Oliver," I said, my voice trembling with fury. He looked momentarily stunned, opening his mouth to respond, but I silenced him with a step forward. "You stroll in here, pour yourself my bourbon, and then think you can just take my wife off for a weekend like it's nothing?" "Let's not create a scene," he replied, an edge creeping into his voice. "A scene?" I let out a cold laugh. "You think this is a scene?" Without warning, I drove my knee into his groin with all the force I could muster. He doubled over, gasping, his glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. Fueled by fury, I followed up with a punch to his jaw, sending him sprawling out onto the porch. He lay there, motionless, a mix of blood and vomit pooling around him as he lost consciousness. Breathing hard, I stood over him, the red fog of rage beginning to lift. Turning, I saw Victoria frozen, horror etched on her face. "What did you just do?" she whispered, voice trembling. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped back inside, locking the door. Leaning against it, I steadied my breath. "Victoria, you may want to check outside," I said, my voice icy. "Someone's got a message for you." Moments later, I heard a voice from outside, followed by, "Miss Larson, you've been served." There was a thud against the door as Victoria collapsed in shock. As the weight of my actions settled in, a strange blend of relief and regret washed over me. The showdown was over, but the fallout had only begun. I wandered back to the living room, knowing life as I knew it had changed. The storm had passed, but now came the hard part, trying to piece everything back together. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. I awoke on the pull-out bed in the office, the ache in my back mirroring the turmoil in my mind. The previous night's events played on repeat in my head. Oliver unconscious on the porch, Victoria's look of horror frozen in time. I shuffled into the kitchen, hoping a strong coffee might bring some clarity. As I poured the steaming mug, the front door creaked open. Victoria stepped inside, her eyes red, clothes wrinkled, her face a mess. She looked at me, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." Setting my coffee cup back down, I turned toward her fully. Victoria, there's really nothing left for us to discuss. You made your choice, I stated, working to keep my tone level. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked away, her gaze dropping to the floor. I never thought we'd end up here, she whispered. Yet, here we are, I replied, striving to stay composed. You welcomed Oliver into our home, assuming I'd somehow just accept it. What did you expect would happen? Her voice cracked as she admitted, I wasn't thinking straight. I needed something different, something that felt new. And what about us? What about our marriage? I pressed, letting frustration seep into my voice. Her head remained bowed. I thought we could move past this, that it didn't have to be the end, she said softly, her words hanging in the air as a heavy truth settled over me. Victoria, the trust we shared is gone. Our marriage can't survive this, I said, facing the harsh reality. She looked up, regret clouding her eyes. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I know, I said quietly, but an apology isn't enough to mend what's been broken. Silence filled the room, each unspoken word adding weight. Finally she spoke, breaking the stillness. What now? She asked, her voice trembling. It's best if you leave, I said, firm but calm. We both need time and space to sort things out. She wiped her tears and nodded. I understand. I'll start packing. As she walked away, a bittersweet sadness swept over me. Despite everything, a part of me still cared. But deep down, I knew this was the only way forward. In the days that followed, Victoria packed her belongings and moved out, leaving the house hollow and strangely quiet. I buried myself in work, trying to keep my mind busy. Friends and family reached out, offering their support, but discussing it was still too raw. About a week later, my friend Dave dropped by. We sat on the porch, beers in hand, sharing a comfortable silence. Finally, he spoke up. This has been tough on you. How are you holding up? I shrugged, taking a sip. Some days are better than others. It's strange to think this is my reality now. I get it, he said, nodding. But you're strong. You'll get through this. Thanks, Dave. His words meant more than I could express. It'll just take time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat in silence, the unspoken understanding between us offering a quiet comfort. In the following weeks, change came slowly but surely. I began reclaiming my space, redecorating the house to feel more like my own, reconnecting with friends, and exploring new hobbies. Gradually, I found myself piecing things back together. One afternoon, while taking a walk through the park, I unexpectedly bumped into an old colleague, Emma. We started chatting, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. It's so good to see you, she said warmly. How have you been holding up? Getting there, I answered truthfully, just taking things day by day. Why don't we grab a coffee sometime? She suggested. It'd be nice to catch up. I'd like that, I said, feeling a small, hopeful spark for what the future might hold. After that stormy confrontation, the lingering chaos seemed to settle, yet it left behind a faint sense of renewal, as if something new was ready to emerge. Walking back home, I felt a flicker of readiness, a strength bolstered by the support of friends and the resilience I'd found within myself. Morning arrived with soft rays of light seeping through the blinds, casting a gentle glow over the kitchen where I sat, coffee cooling beside a daunting stack of papers. The legal documents ending my marriage to Victoria felt surreal, like shadows from a nightmare I was just beginning to leave behind. This step felt necessary. Our marriage had splintered beyond repair, and my final encounter with Oliver had only made that clearer. But knowing it was the right choice didn't ease the ache. A sudden ring at the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to a man in a suit, a folder in his hands. Mr. Ramirez, he asked, his voice professional and restrained. That's me, I replied, feeling a heavy sense of dread. I'm here to deliver these papers, he said, extending the folder toward me. Please sign here to confirm receipt. I signed as he directed, then closed the door, the weight of the folder feeling like a physical burden in my hands. Moments later, Victoria arrived, her face marked by a mix of sadness and acceptance. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the documents between us, a silent witness to all we had shared. "So, this is it," she whispered, regret filling her voice. "Yes, this is it," I answered, my voice steady but thick with unspoken emotion. Her eyes lingered on mine, heavy with remorse. "I never thought it would end this way." "I know," I replied, wanting to keep the exchange brief, yet aware of the pain stretching between us. "But it has, and we need to face that." She nodded, brushing away a tear that escaped down her cheek. "I'm sorry for everything," she murmured, her voice barely holding steady. "I am too, Victoria, but now we have to move forward." Together, we turned our attention to the documents, each signature feeling like another step away from the life we had once built together. A sense of relief mingled with sorrow as the reality set in. When we finished, Victoria stood, clutching her copy of the papers. "I suppose this is goodbye," she said softly, almost to herself. "Yes, it is," I replied, standing as well. She paused for a moment, then leaned in for a brief, awkward hug, a gesture that held all the words left unspoken and emotions unresolved. "Take care of yourself," she said, pulling away. "You too, Victoria," I replied, watching her walk out. As her footsteps faded, the house felt emptier than ever. With the legal matters behind us, the finality of it all sank in. It was time to move on, though I couldn't yet fully grasp what that meant. Over the following days, I kept myself busy disentangling our lives. I met with a lawyer, reviewed finances, and began crafting plans for the future. Each task, though exhausting, felt like a small triumph in a long, arduous journey. One evening, feeling the need for reassurance, I called my sister Linda, who had been an unwavering support through it all. "Hey," she greeted warmly. "Do you have time to talk?" "Of course," she replied instantly. "How are you doing?" "It's been hard," I admitted, "but I'm managing." "I'm glad to hear that," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "You're stronger than you think." Her encouragement was exactly what I needed. "Thank you, Linda. That means a lot," I replied, feeling a bit of the weight ease. We talked for a while, her steady advice and familiar voice easing some of the tension I'd been carrying. When we finally hung up, I felt a renewed sense of determination. The next day, I met with my lawyer to wrap up the final details. As we sifted through the stack of documents, my mind wandered toward the uncertain journey unfolding ahead of me. It was daunting, yet held a glimmer of something new waiting to be discovered. "You're heading in the right direction," my lawyer assured me with quiet confidence. "This is just the beginning of a fresh chapter." I managed a nod. "I know," I replied, feeling the weight of it, "but seeing it that way isn't easy at the moment." He offered a comforting smile. "In time, you'll start to see things differently." As I left his office, I drew in a deep breath, catching the faintest spark of hope within. The legal proceedings had been exhausting, yet each step felt like another piece of the healing I so badly needed. I felt ready to confront the unknown, reassured that each day was nudging me closer to the fresh start I was working toward. Those first weeks after Victoria left had been the hardest. The house, once alive with shared memories, felt unsettlingly empty. I'd wander from one room to the next, each familiar space stirring old recollections. But life had to continue, and I was determined to find my way forward. Small adjustments around the house became my first steps. I painted the living room a calming shade of blue, a color that represented renewal to me. Rearranging the furniture, I created a space that felt truly my own. It was a liberating experience, a means of reclaiming my surroundings to reflect the new path I was carving. One Saturday, I decided to tackle the backyard, which had become overgrown and untidy. Pulling weeds and pruning the overgrown bushes brought a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in a while. The hard work was a welcome distraction, grounding me in the midst of change. In the middle of my work, my neighbor, Mr. Anderson, came by. A warm-hearted older gentleman, he leaned on the fence with his usual friendly smile. "Good morning," The yard's looking better already, he noted cheerfully. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. It's turning into quite the project, I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. Oh, I can see that, he chuckled. How about you join us for dinner tonight? My wife's making her famous lasagna. His invitation was exactly what I needed. That would be wonderful, thank you, I replied, genuinely grateful. Dinner at the Andersons was exactly the solace I had been craving. Their lively home, full of warmth and laughter, was a welcome contrast to the emptiness I'd been feeling. We chatted about everything and nothing, and the light-hearted conversation eased my tired mind. How are you really doing? Mrs. Anderson asked gently over dinner. It's been tough, I admitted, but I'm taking it one day at a time. She reached out, her expression warm and encouraging. You're doing great, truly. There's no rush, she assured me softly. Their kindness reminded me that I wasn't alone and that there were people ready to support me in ways I hadn't fully realized. As the weeks turned into months, I began settling into new routines and rediscovered old interests. I found myself returning to the gym, an outlet I'd let go of during the turbulent years of my marriage. Working out felt like a release, channeling pent-up emotions into something productive. One evening at the gym, I unexpectedly ran into Mike, an old friend. Although years had passed, our connection felt as familiar as ever. Wow, it's been forever. How have you been? He asked, his face lighting up with a friendly smile. Hey, Mike. I've been all right. Things have been rough, but I'm hanging in there, I admitted, giving him a glimpse into my life. Yeah, I heard. I'm really sorry to hear that. Just remember, if you ever need to catch up or vent, I'm here, he said, resting a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Thank you so much, I responded, a warmth coloring my tone, relieved and grateful to rekindle this connection. We began meeting regularly, either over coffee or at the occasional movie, where the weight of my thoughts felt a bit lighter in the presence of someone who truly understood. One day, as we sat in a cozy cafe, Mike leaned in with a thoughtful look. Have you thought about trying something new? Maybe a class or a hobby? Intrigued, I cocked my head. Not really. Do you have anything in mind? There's this cooking class I've been eyeing. It might be fun, and a chance to meet some interesting people, he said, his eyes glimmering with enthusiasm. That actually sounds wonderful, I confessed, feeling a spark of excitement I hadn't felt in some time. The cooking class turned out to be an inspired choice, drawing in people from all walks of life, each with their own unique stories and reasons for joining. In the kitchen, we laughed, learned, and bonded over chopping boards and simmering pots. After one session, as we were tidying up, I chatted with Emma, a warm, friendly classmate. You've got a real knack for this, she commented, nodding toward the pasta I'd just prepared. Thanks, Emma. I'm really enjoying it, I replied with a smile. Same here. Isn't it refreshing to try something new? She asked, her eyes filled with a blend of joy and curiosity. It really is, I agreed, feeling a genuine connection. That night, as I walked home, I felt lighter than I had in ages. Moving forward wasn't always easy, but with the support of friends, both familiar and newfound, and the courage to embrace change, I could glimpse a brighter future. The hurt from the past lingered, but it no longer defined me. Months passed since Victoria left, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. The house, once heavy with tension, had become a peaceful retreat. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and added decor that sparked joy. It finally felt like my own, a true reflection of this new phase. On a sunny Saturday morning, I decided to visit the downtown farmers market, a tradition Victoria and I used to share. This time, though, I felt ready to build new memories. Wandering through the lively stalls, the vibrant colors and bustling energy lifted my spirits. I picked up some fresh vegetables, a loaf of artisan bread, and a jar of homemade jam. Enjoying these simple pleasures felt wonderful. Is that you? Came a familiar voice. Turning around, I saw Emma from cooking class smiling brightly. Emma, what a great surprise. How've you been? I asked, genuinely happy to see her. I'm good, just stocking up on produce for the week. And you? She replied, her eyes filled with the same warmth. Same here. It's a beautiful day for it, I said, holding up my bag of market finds with a grin. Want to grab a coffee and catch up? She suggested. Perfect, I agreed. We found a cozy cafe nearby, settling into a quiet corner where the aroma of fresh coffee surrounded us and the gentle hum of conversations added to the ambiance. So, how have you really been? Emma asked, her expression sincere. I'm doing well, I answered honestly. It's been a journey, but I'm finding my way. I'm really glad to hear that, she said, her gaze steady and full of kindness. You look lighter, more at peace. And for the first time in a long while, I realized she was right. I actually felt it. As time passed, I finally started to see the silver lining in this new phase of my life. Over a quiet coffee, I confided in Emma, sharing some of the realizations I had gathered along the way. She listened, her smile warm and encouraging. That's amazing, she said, her voice laced with a touch of happiness that felt sincere. You really deserve to be happy. Thanks, Emma. That means a lot to me, I replied, feeling a soft warmth rise within me, something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Our conversation meandered through different topics, but I found myself coming back to how much her presence had started to mean. There was a calmness about her, a gentle empathy that instantly made me feel at home. When it came time to say goodbye, I walked away with a quiet thrill, imagining the possibilities the future might hold. That night, back home, I decided to try a recipe from the cooking class Emma and I had attended together. My kitchen, which had once been a place heavy with shared memories, was beginning to feel like a space ready for something new. With each chop and stir, I found myself immersed in the simple joy of preparing a meal. As I finally sat down to eat, a calm satisfaction filled me, a comfort I hadn't experienced in ages. The house was quiet, but it wasn't a lonely silence. It was a restful stillness, as if holding space for the promise of new beginnings. A week later, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. Hey, just calling to let you know everything's finalized. The divorce is now official. Thanks for the update, I said, feeling a blend of emotions rise within me. He paused, then gently asked, How are you doing with it all? To be honest, I'm all right. It's actually a relief, I answered, surprised at how true those words felt. I'm ready to move forward. That's good to hear. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything, he offered with genuine warmth. Thank you truly for all your help, I said before we ended the call. I sat for a moment, absorbing the fact that a big chapter of my life had officially closed. Yet, along with that sense of closure, there was a budding optimism, a feeling that something new and hopeful was beginning to unfold. A few days later, my phone chimed with a message from Emma. Hey, some of us from the cooking class are hosting a potluck this weekend. Would love for you to join. A smile spread across my face, and I felt a spark of anticipation. Count me in, I replied. The potluck was a lively mix of laughter, shared stories, and delicious food. Surrounded by this welcoming group, I felt the strength of new connections. As the night drew to a close, Emma and I found ourselves on the porch, enjoying the soft evening air. I'm really glad you came tonight, she said quietly. Me too, Emma, I admitted, feeling a deep sense of peace. This has been one of the best nights I've had in quite some time. Here's to more nights like this, she said, lifting her glass with a warm smile. To fresh starts, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. Together we gazed at the stars in a contented silence. This journey had been hard, but it had led me here, to a place of new beginnings, supportive friends, and a future brimming with possibility. Moving forward wasn't just about closing the door on the past. It was about fully embracing today and all the days to come. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuine excitement about what awaited. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.